Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Edvicon International, I warmly welcome you all to the session, Introduction to Azure DevOps and Implementing CI/CD Pipeline with Azure Pipelines. During this webinar, you will be introduced to DevOps using Azure, CI/CD pipelines, and also implementation of CI/CD pipelines with Azure. Now it's time for us to start off the evening's proceedings. Before everything, a small reminder for all of you. We will be sharing a Pigeonhole link in the chat box, so you can use that to direct the questions towards our speaker. So without taking much time, let me introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Kasun Rajapakse. He is a cloud enthusiast based in Sri Lanka and currently working as a Senior DevOps Engineer at Ascentic. He has more than 8 years of experience in cloud technologies, and also he is well versed in multiple cloud technologies and has a special interest in everything Kubernetes. That's not all. He actively contributes to the community by speaking in user groups, conferences, and content creating. Mr. Kasun is also a Microsoft certified trainer, Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Certified Kubernetes Administrator, and holds several cloud certifications from Microsoft, AWS, and Google Cloud as well. Please welcome Mr. Kasun Rajapakse to commence this session. Over to you, Mr. Kasun.
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. So I'm glad that I can deliver this session for you guys all. So let's get started and we'll see how we can use Azure DevOps and Azure DevOps pipelines for our CI/CD deployments, right? Okay, so let's first I will share my screen with you guys. So then we'll go through our slides first. I hope everyone can see my screen, right?
Yeah. Yes, it's visible. Right?
Yeah, sure. So as for the introduction, my name is Kasun. So I'm Microsoft MVP for Azure. So I work with multiple cloud platforms, especially in Azure and DevOps technologies, Kubernetes, and those kind of stuff. So I have more than 8 years experience in the cloud industry, right? So first, we will see what we are going to cover for today's session. So first, we will see what is DevOps, right? And let's then we'll have an introduction about what is Azure DevOps, and then we'll see what is meant by a CI/CD pipeline. Then at the end, we will see how we can use Azure DevOps for our continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines. Then at the end, I will do a demo by using Azure DevOps CI/CD pipelines. Okay, so what is DevOps, right? So in today's IT industry, DevOps is a buzzword. That means everyone is talking about DevOps. Everyone is trying to be a DevOps engineer and practice DevOps, right? So when it comes to the definition of what is DevOps, a lot of people has a misconception in the IT community that it is only about tools, right? So when I ask from someone what is DevOps, they will always say, most of the people are saying DevOps is Kubernetes, Docker, then Terraform, then cloud, and those kind of stuff, right? Actually, those are only a part of DevOps. But when you talk about what is DevOps, actually it is a culture and a practice that teams, organization, your development teams and the organization can use to deliver your application more efficiently and fastly to the end users, right? So actually DevOps, when you define DevOps, it doesn't have a specific definition based on your organization and your product. the definition of DevOps can be changed, right? So in the general terms, when you talk about what is DevOps, we talk about DevOps is a combination of culture, practice, and tools that increase an organization's ability to deliver applications and services at high velocity. So in this definition, you can see that I have highlighted few keywords, right? Culture, practice, and tools, right? So when you talk about those Kubernetes, then Docker, and other other tools, it's a part of DevOps. It's not the totally about DevOps, right? So when you want to practice DevOps, you need to practice the DevOps principles. Then you need to implement the culture of DevOps, and by using combination of all of these three combinations, we can achieve DevOps in your organization and develop your dev teams, right? So what will happen from the DevOps is it will reduce the application deployment time and increase the application delivery in a much more efficient and faster manner, right? Okay, so let's talk about these key aspects of the DevOps. So first one is a culture. Culture is represented by human communication, technical processes, and tools. So when you're working in the development teams, you know that culture is very important, right? Because when you are when you're working with multiple people, multiple team members, their expertise, the communication, how we should communicate with each other, how we distribute our knowledge, and how distribute our ideas is very important, right? So those communication and processes and tools are come to the cultural aspects. So in there, you are in the culture, we as a team, we need to share our feedbacks, then we need to practice we need to implement best practices with the team and sharing the knowledge, right? So in the bottom, I have mentioned that DevOps is a mindset. That means actually DevOps is not only about tools. So you have to take it as a culture and adopt it into your organization. Then the practice. So in the DevOps, when you talk about DevOps, the second one we need to implement is practice. Practice is a processes and use automation as possible to make your application deployment and development much more easier. So in the practice of DevOps, we are using different concepts. So one is continuous integration and continuous deployment. Then we have infrastructure as a code, then GitOps, then observability, then automated releases. So those are the few practices that we use in DevOps culture. There are a lot of more practices. So these are the few items, practices I have mentioned. So today we are going to talk about one of this practice called CI, continuous integration and continuous deployment or delivery. Right? So in the practices, what we are going to do is we need to automate out of ourselves. That means whatever the things is possible to automate, we should automate it, right? So we call it as a toil. So we need to reduce the toil and automate as much as possible. So now we come to the tools, right? So these are the most of the people know about DevOps, right? So a lot of people, as I mentioned previously, when you ask what is DevOps, they always say Kubernetes, Docker, Terraform, Git, Azure DevOps, likewise. So those are actually tools. So tools is one part on the DevOps. So these are few tools that are commonly used in DevOps cultures. So there are a lot of other tools apart from these tools, these famous tools. So here we have mentioned Kubernetes. It is an orchestration platform for your containerized application. Then Docker we are used to create Dockerize your application and create containers. Then Terraform we are used for infrastructure as a code tool for provisioning cloud on-premises and multi-cloud infrastructure. Then Azure, AWS, GCP, and other cloud providers they are giving a platform us to deploy our application. Then Git we are using for our version controlling. Then Azure DevOps is another tool with different DevOps tools like Git, then pipelines, test plans, and Artifactory and those kind of stuff. So tools can learn by anyone working as the mindset is the matter, right? So tools is always a optional part. That means not optional means if you want to learn a tool, it is obvious you can go to the documentation and you check some tutorials and you can learn it. But working as a mindset is very important in DevOps culture. So when you're working with multiple teams. Okay, now let's see what does the DevOps means for teams, right? So in the early days of software development, right? So we have business entity, business silo, then we have development silo, then we have operational teams, right? We have 3 different teams, right? So in the whoever the people who are handling the business, they will give product enhancements and requirements to the development team. Then the development team will develop those requirements and features, and they put a release. They will hand it over to the ops team, right? So in these early days of development, we have silos. Silos means we have separate entity for business and separate entity for development and operation. So these 3 entities are separated by each other, and they don't communicate oftenly within the teams, right? So in the early 2000s, I can't remember. So the agile approach is coming into the picture to fix the business and the development gap, right? So by using agile as a business requirements, product owners and the development team work together to prioritize the what need to be developed and what need to be released and those kind of stuff, right? Then DevOps came to fix the conflict between the operational team and the development team, because before the DevOps come to the picture, what will development team do is they will build the application, they will pass the release to the operational team, and they don't even after that it's not their responsibility, right? So then the operation team will be responsible for up and running the application, right? Then there will be conflicts between operational team saying that it's not working in the production environment, then development team say it's working in my environment. Likewise, there will be conflicted between those 2 teams, right? So to avoid those conflicts, the DevOps came to the picture, and now the operational teams and the development teams are working together to make sure the application is up and running and achieve the business goals and go to faster go-to-market access, right? So in this definition, that's what it's mentioning. So it is removing the silo role that we had in the development IT operation and other teams. And by introducing DevOps, what we do is we will do a coordinated and collaborative to produce better, more reliable products for your organization. So this is a Microsoft definition of DevOps. So as I mentioned you previously, these definition of DevOps may be different between the organizations, right? So this is a Microsoft definition. So according to Microsoft, their DevOps definition is a component of development and operation. DevOps is a union of process, people, and technology to continuously provide value to the customer, right? So in this definition, you can see there are few keywords like people, process, and technology. So to enable DevOps, you need to make sure that the union, there's a keyword is union of people, process, and technology. That means to make add a value to your customers, you need to work as a team and collaborative with the people and the process of your organization and the technologies as well. Okay, now let's see what is CI/CD pipeline, right? So when it comes to CI/CD pipeline, actually it's a way of automating your application deployment into production or other development environment. So in the early days of software development, we had to do it on manually. That means as the development team produce the release package, then as operational team, you need to go and configure your application manually and by using scripts, right? So what we'll do from the CI/CD pipeline is by using version controlling, we will versionize our application code. Then when there's a code commit, then it will trigger a CI pipeline, that is continuous integration pipeline. So from the CI pipeline, it will do a lot of steps, right? One is building the application, right? So if it is a .NET application, you can use .NET Restore in .NET Build and .NET Release, those kind of build process. Then we can do unit testing, right? Testing is very important for your applications, right? So it's important to do it on the CI pipeline. Then other integration testing that you need to do for your application, right? So why we are doing these things in the CI pipeline is if there are any defects or any failures or vulnerabilities, we can identify it much more quickly and fast manner, right? So if you are doing it on the traditional way, then you should wait until you put it to the production environment, and we need to wait someone complaining or someone is pointing out there's a bug or there's a vulnerability, right? But by using CI pipelines, we can fail fast and identify what are the bugs and what are the items we need to fix for our application, right? So then when the CI pipeline is completed, then we can use to we can deploy the same artifacts to the CD pipeline. So in the CD pipeline, we are use CD means continuous deployment or delivery, right? So in the CD pipeline, we can use a reviews. That means if you want to release that package into a specific environment, we can put reviews, then the approvals, those kind of controls onto the CD pipeline, and we can deploy it to the different environment, right, based on your requirement. So for example, after the build process, first it will go to the QA, then the staging. Then after the QA and staging is completed, then you can use another approval process to deploy to the production, right? So those kind of approvals and gates can be put into the CD pipeline and automate the entire deployment process. Okay, now let's see what is Azure DevOps means, right? So in the Azure DevOps, we have a is it collaborative tool, right? And we can use the Azure DevOps for development and your build and deployment of your application, right? So the beauty of Azure DevOps is it supports cultures, set of processes, and the development, project management, and contributors as well. That means Azure DevOps is a set of tools that use for all the aspects of DevOps culture, right? DevOps process, right? So as we go into the demos, I will show you those tools, right? So as a project manager, he can use Azure boards to manage the user stories, tasks, and bugs, those kind of stuff. So as a developer, we can use Azure repos to versionize our code. Then DevOps people and developers can use CICD pipelines. Then the test QA can use tester plans and artifacts as well. There are a lot of tools available to make your DevOps organization DevOps practices implementation, right? So now let's see what are the tools that are available with Azure DevOps, right? So we have Azure boards. So Azure board is a fully integrated end-to-end traceability of your organizational project management. That means by using Azure boards, you can create your requirements for your applications. Then you can use backlogs, then tasks, then the bug reports, those kind of prioritization and sprint planning, those kind of planning and collaborative processes can be done from Azure boards. Azure repos is a scalable Git repository functionality you have. That means by using Azure repos, you can versionize your application code, and you can use pull requests to merge new changes to your application. So those are supported in Azure repos. Azure pipeline is the way of deploying your CI/CD pipelines. So Azure pipeline is a very robust tool that we can build your applications. So there Azure pipeline support not only .NET, it will almost support all of the languages that are available. So it is cross-platform as well. So that means you can deploy your application not only to the Azure, you can deploy to the AWS, GCP, on-premises as well from the Azure pipelines. Azure test plan is used for planning your test processes. So QA teams can use Azure test plans. Azure Artifact is used to store your NuGet packages and other language package managements can be hosted in Azure Artifacts. Now let's see how Azure DevOps integration with CI/CD and how Azure DevOps tools are fit into the Azure CI/CD process. So as an engineer, you are working with your code editor, right? Text IDE, right? It may be Visual Studio, it may be VS Code or whatever the tool, right? Then we committed our code into the Azure repos, right? From the Azure repos, we are used for our application code versioning. So then when you do a commit, then it will run the build process, right? There it will run the test plans and pipelines also, right? So then from the pipeline, it will deploy to your platform. It can be Azure App Service, or can be Azure Kubernetes Service, or whatever the platform you are used to host your application. Then if you have a monitoring platform for your application, from there you can get the continuous feedback to your team about the application. And engineers are working with Azure boards to assign the user stories and assign the task and fixing the bugs and planning the sprints. So they are working with Azure boards for collaborative aspects. Okay, next. So this is a high-level overview of how the Azure DevOps pipeline works. In this case, this will use a Azure Web App and a SQL database to deploy the application through a CI/CD pipeline, right? So here we have a repo. In the repo, we have the code. Then from the build pipeline, it will build the application. Then from the release, it will make sure that the relevant infrastructure is available. So by using Azure Resource Manager deployments, we can automate the creation of the infrastructure if it is not present. So from the ARM template, it will create the infrastructure, and from the release pipeline, after the creation of the infrastructure, it will deploy the application to the created infrastructure. Okay, now we'll jump into the demo, right? So for this demo, I'm going to use CI/CD with Azure Kubernetes cluster, right? So I have my code in GitHub, right? So and my code is integrated with Azure DevOps, right? GitHub is integrated with Azure DevOps for running the pipelines, right? So then it will trigger a pipeline and it will build the Docker image. Then it will push to the Azure Container Registry. Then from the release, it will deploy to the Kubernetes cluster. From the Kubernetes, it will the image will download with the Kubernetes cluster and deploy the application. From the application, engineers will get the feedback, and then they are integrated with the Azure boards to manage their task and bugs and all the user stories, right? So now we'll go to the demo. Okay. I want to hide this video. How can I do it? Okay. Okay. So this is the Azure DevOps portal. That means Azure DevOps service portal, right? So Azure DevOps is a free for sign up. That means as students, you don't have to pay anything to sign up for Azure DevOps, right? So you can go to a dev, you can Google search DevOps, right? Azure DevOps, sorry. Right. So then from the Azure DevOps product page, you can sign up, right? So here there's a button called start free. By clicking this one, you can go and sign up for free, right? So you don't have to put any credit cards or anything. You can just sign up, right? Okay, so here in my Azure DevOps organization, I have multiple repos, right? So today we are going to talk about this multi-container deployment repository, right? So here I have my project here. Then you can see those different Azure products that I have mentioned previously, like Azure boards. Right? So here you have all the work items and your project management tools, right, with you. So you can assign different tasks to you from this board, right? Then repos, you have your repository, but in my case, I thought of doing it on a different way, right? So when you create Azure pipelines, you can use other third-party repositories as well, right? That's the beauty of Azure pipelines. So your code should be, it's not mandatory to have your code in the Azure repos. It can be in GitHub or any other version controlling platform. You can use Azure pipeline for that. So if you have a code in your Azure repos, like this one here, your code is stored in here. So here you can see commits, then if you have branches, they will also show here, right? And if you have pull requests to merge it to a different branch, so all of these Git related, repository related items are stored in here. So the pipeline is our main focus today, right? So in the pipeline section, we can build our CI/CD pipeline, automate our continuous integration and deployment. So here I have my pipeline with me. So this is the pipeline runs, right? So I will show you how to get started creating a pipeline. Then I will show you I will explain the already created pipeline of this pipeline. Then you can get an idea about what is what happening from the pipeline, right? So the test plans also can add your QA testing stuffs here, right? And artifacts also used to keep your feeds and package management, artifacts management, your organization. Now let's go into the pipelines, right? In the Azure DevOps pipelines, you have two ways of creating pipelines. One is by, you can use YAML based pipeline creation, or you can use GUI based. But now Microsoft is recommending to use GUI based, not GUI, the YAML based pipeline, because you can versionize your pipeline if you are doing it on YAML file, right? So then you can see what's the changes you have done, and you can easily integrate with your version controlling system, right? So GUI based pipeline is the older legacy way of creating a pipelines, right? So now we'll go and see how we can get started of creating a pipeline. So when you go to the pipelines here, under the pipeline section, there's a button called new pipeline. You can click here. Then it will ask you where is your code is stored, right? So as I mentioned you previously, you can connect your code repository from these supported sources. That means if it is in Azure repos, can be done. Bitbucket, GitHub, GitHub Enterprise, or any other Git or Subversion centralized version controlling systems also supported. So then there's a bottom, there's a link called use the classic editor. That means if you are using these methods, it will go with the YAML based configuration, right? So you can see YAML tag here. So those are YAML based. But if you want to go with the classical way, so you can click the classical option. So in there also, it will ask where is your code and the repository, all the stuff. Okay, but I will show you how to do it on YAML base, because that is the future of pipelines. So in here, you can see that my code is not in the Azure repos, it is in GitHub. So when I'm click GitHub, I have integrated my Azure DevOps with GitHub account, my GitHub account. So then I can select the repository here. Then there are pre-built pipeline configurations you can use, right? So if you are going to deploy to the Kubernetes service, just you can select one of these pre-built templates, right? Or you can start with your from the scratch, or if you already have a YAML pipeline file, then you can use it as well, right? So I will just for demo, I will select Azure Kubernetes service. So it will ask for the subscription and those kind of stuff. And after that, you can configure it from this same place, right? So I will close this one and I will show you the pipeline I have created, and I will explain different steps that are in that pipeline. So I already have a pipeline here, right? So it is a YAML based pipeline. So if I go to the edit, you can see the Azure pipeline.yml file. So you can see that it is in my code repository, right? So I can easily versionize my pipeline code as well. Okay, so first thing in the pipeline is you need to have a trigger. That means to start this pipeline, what should be the trigger, right? So you can see you can do a lot of filters or conditions into this trigger, right? So you can go to the DevOps documentation and find out how to filter the triggers, right? So from this example here, what it means is if I do a commit into the main branch, it will trigger this pipeline, right? That's the meaning of these first two lines, right? So if you want to trigger say different this pipeline based on your pull request or even specific branch, then you can filter out it from this trigger option. Then the variable section, I have mentioned some pipeline variables. So these variables will be very useful when you want to refer same configurations in multiple places. So you don't need to hard code. You need to, if you are changing those variables, you don't need to change all the places. Just by declaring by a variable, it will be easy to manage and change in the future, right? So I have a few here. All right. So leaderboard repository names, then the web repository names, those things, right? So if you see these $build ID, so these are pipeline variables that are provided by the Microsoft Azure pipelines. So these are already built into the pipeline. So you can, when you want to build the pipeline, if you want these specific variables to your task, then you can refer them by using these pre-built environment variables in the pipeline, right? So from here, what will happen is it will take my build ID and store it as a tag, right? Then in the pipeline, we can create multiple stages. Stages means deployment, isolated deployment stages, right? So each stages can have multiple jobs, and multiple inside the job you can have different tasks, right? So for example, for stages is you can have a stage called build, then you can have another stage called release, then you can have another stage called test. Likewise, there may be multiple stages, right? So inside the stage you have the jobs, right? So you can have job called build for the build stage. Then if you are doing any unit testing, then you can have another job called testing. Likewise, you can specify different jobs, right? So inside the jobs we have different steps, right? So in this example, I have a build job. So to build the application, I am using different steps, right? So in the steps we have tasks. So those tasks are used to build the application. So for build we are using different tasks, right? So in this case we are using Docker build for building the image, right? So if you want to do any different task in this build job, you can do it, right? So here you can see there are two tasks running here. One is building the web application and the leaderboard application. So they are used two tasks, right? So if you have another job like testing, those kind of things, you can add it here as additional job. So at the end, what will I do is I will publish these build artifacts, build items, manifest stuff to the as an artifact. So then I can use these artifacts in my deployment process. So the next stage is deploy stage. So here what we are doing is we are deploying our build application into the Kubernetes cluster. So here it is the same concept as the jobs. So under the jobs you have multiple tasks. So the first task is creating image pool secret because we need to authenticate with our content registry to pull the image. So therefore we need the image pool secret. Then the other task, what we are doing is we are using the publish artifact manifest, and we'll use that manifest to deploy our application and application YAML, deployment YAML, and the services YAML into the Kubernetes cluster, right? So then it will use the container images we have pushed from the build image to the container registry and deploy it to the Kubernetes cluster. Right? So this is a basic Azure DevOps CI/CD pipeline with Azure Kubernetes service, right? So if you want to add any task, you can find it here from the right side menu, right? So if you want to build, then you can put arguments and you can click add, then it will add to this YAML, right? If you can't find these specific tasks, you can go to the Visual Studio Marketplace and you can search it from there, or you can create your own scripts as well from this pipeline. Right? Okay, now what we'll do is we will do a change in our code and we will trigger a build pipeline. So here you can see that my code is in GitHub. So I have integrated with GitHub with my pipeline. So if I do any change into my main branch of GitHub repository, it will trigger the this pipeline and run it from here. Right? So we'll go and do a small change. I'm not doing any fancy change, right? Just adding a comment. So now I will commit it. So I'm committing into the main branch. Right? Now I committed it. Now it should trigger the build pipeline. And now you can see that the build pipeline is starting, right? So now you can see my commit message is here and it is triggered from the GitHub commit. Now we will show you a visualized way of running your build pipeline. So first it will run the build process, then it will check out the code, then it will build the application, right? To build the application, we are using Docker file. So this Docker file is in my Git repository under the application code. There's a Docker file. So here it will do the .NET restore, then copy the files and restore and the build and publish. Everything will be done. And here we are using the multi-stage build. So that means for building, we are using a separate stage, and we'll at the end of the build, it will copy the relevant build packages into a different container. Right? Okay, now the web one is build completed, right? So you can see the entire log here. After the build completed, it will push to my container registry. So the build ID is 49. So if I go to my container registry under the repositories. Under the web, there's a image version called 49 build ID, right? So that means it was built and published it to the container registry. Okay. Now both applications are built and published. After that, it will upload the artifacts, that artifact file, that is manifest files we need for Kubernetes deployment, the deployment YAMLs. Then it will download the artifact file that we publish from the build stage. And we'll create the image full secret. Then we will create the application. Right. So you can see that we'll create two deployments and two services, one for the web and the leaderboard, and two services for leaderboard and the web. Now we'll go and see the Kubernetes cluster where the application is, pods are deploying. So we use K is for alias, so for kubectl. So get pods. Okay, now you can see the web one is already running and later one is still creating. Sometimes it will take a few minutes. Okay, now the leaderboard also in the running state, right? Now this web application is assigned with the public IP, right? So let's see what are those public IPs. So I will get the services available. So here there's a load balance services with the public IP. So I will copy the public IP. Then I will. This application is taking a little bit of time to start. So at the moment it will still starting from the application end. So you won't see a output immediately. So we'll wait a little bit of time, right? Then you can see the application. Now, now you can you saw that I did only one commit for my repo. Then the entire building process and the deployment process is automated. So that's a way of using Azure DevOps CICD pipelines to automate your application deployment, right? Okay. So if you have any questions, I think now we can answer for those questions until this application is starting. Okay, started, right? So you can see the application is working correctly, right? Okay, so before I end this session, okay. So before I end this session, I need to share how you can learn about DevOps, right? So there's a book called the Phoenix Project. I highly recommend you guys to read this book, right? So this is a when you read this book, you can understand how the DevOps is working, right? So this is not a technical book or any kind of book. It's like a story, right? So by using this story, you can see how they implement the DevOps in your organization. The other book is this one. So if you can remember, see this. This is a DevOps Handbook, right? So this also a good book. After you read in the Phoenix projects, if you want to know more about the DevOps practices, please go and read the DevOps Handbook book as well. Okay, I think it's time for any questions. Sure.
Thank you very much for the informative session. So with that, we will go ahead and take some time for the questions. Now it's your time to clarify any doubts you may have come across during this session. All you have to do is put in your questions in the Pigeonhole link we have shared in the chat box. So let's see what you have put in the Pigeonhole. Yeah, I have a few questions here. So I'll direct those to the speaker. First question is, for an entry-level job opportunity, what are the things that we need to learn or familiar with, meaning DevOps?
What are the?
For an entry-level job opportunity, what are the things that need to learn or familiar with?
Okay, so as entry-level job opportunities, you need to be familiar with cloud technologies, and as I mentioned, whatever your favorite cloud, you can use any cloud you are like. If you are good with AWS, good to go with AWS or Azure, whatever the cloud. Then you need to know about the concepts before you you go to the tools. You need to know about the concept of DevOps and those kind of stuff, right? Then when it comes to the tool for entry level, you need to know about containerization. Then CICD, what is CICD means, and those kind of tools. So if you are working with GitHub, CICD, or Azure DevOps, you can familiar with one of these tools or any one. Then infrastructure as a code tool like Terraform, then Kubernetes. Those are the tools. And but as I mentioned in the session, so we have to know about the concepts and the processes in Azure DevOps. Sorry, in the DevOps, to work with the DevOps teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So the second question is, what is the difference between GitHub Action and Azure pipelines?
Okay, there's a the both are doing the CI/CD pipelines, so it's doing the same thing. The difference is, I think, GitHub Action is still not mature as I can't say it's not mature as Azure DevOps, but GitHub Action has some features that are not, sorry, Azure DevOps has some features that are not available in GitHub Actions, but GitHub Action is evolving very rapidly, so they are introducing new features. So because it also has a lot of potential, both are doing the same thing as Azure DevOps pipelines and GitHub Action. So you can use any of these tools.
And another question, as a beginner for DevOps, what kind of projects are you recommend?
Okay, so what I can't recommend any specific projects, but what you have to do is you have to practice those things from yourself. So there are a lot of online materials you can online to tutorials. Just go and practice those stuffs. Then you can easily get in touch with the technologies and the processes, so that you can easily understand those stuffs. Yeah, that's a way of getting to know stuff. That means making your hands dirty is the best way to learn stuff.
Okay, there's another question, this attendee says that he has a SharePoint hosted Angular application, and he asked, what is the best approach for implementing the DevOps pipeline for this scenario?
SharePoint, so there you can I can't say that this is good approach, but if you are using if you have Azure DevOps with the organization, then you can use Azure DevOps CICD pipelines. There are tools, that tasks and features that are available in the pipeline. So to push your code into the Azure SharePoint, because SharePoint is also Microsoft products and Azure DevOps is Microsoft product. So there are a lot of good integration between those two products. So I think Azure DevOps will be a good option for this too.
Yeah, so we have more questions. And the next question is, what is the significance of having configuration management in DevOps?
Yeah, so configuration management is a very important in the DevOps, because so configuration management and the infrastructure deployment is two different things. But conflict those. Configuration management is like configuring your virtual machines or applications through a code, right? So for example, if your application is running on virtual machines or set of virtual machines, then you, by using CI/CD pipelines like Ansible, by using Ansibles, you can configure your virtual machines as per your requirement. Like if you need to install any specific packages into the virtual machines and prep your virtual machines before the application deployment, so then you can use configuration management for that one. So configuration management can be applied into specific scenarios, like as I mentioned previously. So provisioning, if you're provisioning into your virtual machines, your application is provisioned to virtual machine, before pushing the code, you need to install all the packages, dependencies, and the updates and all of this stuff, right? And your configuration, the web server configurations, all of this to be pushed before the application deployment, right? So those kind of steps you can use configuration management.
Okay, another question is, what is the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment?
Yeah, continuous delivery is a way of using some manual step, right, to deploy the application to the production. The continuous deployment means using fully automated way of deploying the application into the production, right? So there are only few organizations that I think there are organizations that are doing continuous deployment. That means when you do the commit to your code base, it will go to all the build processes, testing and everything, and that commit, the change or the feature that you committed will be deployed to the production in few hours or few minutes, right? Without any interaction. but the continuous delivery is the way of doing a manual deployment based on your organization's requirements. So in that case, we have a manual intervention when you do the deployment.
Yeah, and also we have another difference between question and this. In this question, they ask what is the difference between Azure DevOps Services and Azure DevOps Server?
Yeah, so Azure DevOps Server is the on-premises version of Azure DevOps, right? So some organization may have the regulatory requirements, right, to keep their code or their build logs in-house. So in that case, you can use Azure DevOps Server in your own data center and use it for your application building. So you have the full control over the Azure DevOps processes, right? In the Azure DevOps is a cloud-based one, so you can't manage the hosted agents or infrastructure from your own.
Okay. And one last question I'm going is, what is continuous testing and what is the use of test automation in DevOps?
Yeah, so continuous testing is important because by using continuous testing, you can easily identify the bugs and vulnerabilities or your application defects very quickly, and you can act on that as fast as possible before it go to the production. So testing is also very important because by using without testing, if you release your application without proper testing, it will harm your company or your product because of the bug, your application will be unavailable, or it will be end user will complain that your application is not working correctly. So it will affect your reputation in your organization. So we can avoid those things by doing testing at the beginning. So then you can identify those loopholes, bugs, and you can fix it.
Okay. Because of the time limits, we have to move on, and I guess we have to wrap up our Q&A session here. On behalf of Edvicon International, I would like to thank our distinguished speaker, Mr. Kasun Rajapakse, for the knowledge and experiences shared with us to educate our audience on this important topic. It is a huge honor for us to have you here today, and we truly appreciate your support in making this event a huge success. Mr. Kasun, please accept this digital token of appreciation.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm good. I can help you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you all once again for coming. So guys, we will be circulating a feedback form. Please be kind enough to give us your sincere feedback regarding today's session. And also I must mention that we'll be using the same form to fetch your data to the certificates. Therefore, please fill that form, otherwise you miss your chance to get the certificate. And don't forget to follow us on social media platforms and be updated about our future events as well, because we have planned so many things for you. With all those, we have come to the end of our session, Introduction to Azure DevOps and Implementing CI/CD Pipelines with Azure Pipelines. So now I invite Mr. 𝕸𝕦𝕣𝕖 𝔻𝕚𝕚, the co-founder of Edvicon International, to deliver the word of thanks. Over to you, Mr. 𝕸𝕦𝕣𝕖.
Thank you, Nadine. Hope you can hear me, right?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, on behalf of everyone here today, I would like to thank our guest speaker, Mr. Kasun, for taking the time to speak to us. It's an honor to have you in this evening. So your insights and guidance on Azure DevOps and implementation of CI/CD pipelines using Azure pipelines has provided a positive impact on the knowledge of all participants. Also, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to all the audience here. And if you haven't participated today, this session won't be a success. So I wish you all improved knowledge on Azure DevOps and CI/CD pipeline implementations. And as Nitin mentioned, please don't forget to fill out the feedback form given in the chat. Finally, once again, on behalf of entire Edvicon international community, thank you. Over to you, Nitin.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will be wrapping things up in today's session. We hope to see you guys with another new informative session like this in the near future. Until then, stay safe and good night.